Hello, everybody. We are going to get started today. A couple cool things are happening. We are beginning to record all of our Tuesday talks. So they will be eventually posted on our website. I'm working on getting a page dedicated to the talk series, and anybody that allows me to do talk or record talks will be published there. Not everybody will allow their talks to be recorded for several reasons. Some people have information that is soon to be published and they don't want that to be public knowledge, or they do these talks quite often and they don't want people just to go and view those recordings. But I think other people really enjoy having that information shared as possible. Another really cool happening is that we actually have our first sponsors, which is really exciting. So the next couple of talks will be sponsored by the A-Church Group with Homes Finder Realty Group, and I'll talk about them in just a minute. But we are allowing anybody to be a sponsor. If you're interested, please reach out. As well as if this allows us to continue running these education programs for free. So I always emphasize that these are free programs. So any donations allow us to continue to do that when we go back and look at budgets in the new year. This will not be marked off the agenda. This is a big thank you to the A-Church Group with Homes Finder Realty Group for sponsoring this program. So the next couple of them will be sponsored by them. So I do also want to mention that your video and microphones are off. Please direct questions to the Q&A located at the bottom of your screen or in the chat. If you put it in the chat, just know that everyone's going to be able to see it unless you direct it directly to the host and panelists and not to everyone. So if you have questions, put them in the Q&A and chat, and I will field those questions to Victoria today when it's appropriate. If it's something that needs repeating and you maybe already know the question and just want a yes or no, then I will just answer that directly and not interrupt the presentation. But if it pertains to a certain slide, or if you are confused about something, then I will be glad to repeat your question to Victoria during the presentation. If you want to know more about these talks, you need to go to our website and go to our calendar. The next couple of talks are pretty good. Lydia Moore with Palmetto Bluff Conservancy will be talking about bats in the Low Country, and that is at the end of March. Then we will have Whit Gibbons, who is one of the top herpetologists in the state, talking about the longest running terrapin program that's done on Kiowa Island. And then after that is Anna Maris, and she will be talking about the evolution of jellyfish venom, which is pretty cool, that I'm really excited about as well. So we do quite a diversity of talks: reptiles, invertebrates, recycling, composting, you name it, we try to cover it. I also take suggestions for talks. That's actually how some of these talks came to be, where people had questions about jellyfish, and so I found a jellyfish expert. I had people ask me about recycling, and so I found our local recycling expert. So any suggestions that you have about a topic, please feel free to forward them to us. We are going to do a summer series, so I'll publish that in the next month once I have all the speakers lined up for the summer series. I have about 4 of them so far, and I'm looking for a couple more. So please feel free to share any suggestions. So again, let's go back to our sponsors. I do have something I want to say from the sponsors. We want to say thank you to them and the A-Church Group with the Homes Finder Realty Group for supporting our webinar today. The A-Church Group is a professional realtors that are dedicated to the craft and their clients and care about the environment. For more information about the A-Church Group, I'm going to post a link. You can find them at the link I just posted in the chat. But I will also say the reason that this group was able to reach out to us is because William A. Church has been coming or participating in almost all of our Sound Vision webinar series. So he liked them so much that he was willing to become one of the sponsors, and he participates in most of the events. So definitely a group that is aware and willing to educate themselves about our area. So that's good to know that at least we have a realty group that is willing to do that. So really big appreciation for that and a big thank you. If you have any questions for me, just let me know, but we are going to get started. I'm going to introduce our speaker, who is Victoria Hoffman. Victoria is the recycling coordinator for Beaufort County. She conducts education and outreach through the county. Her previous experience consists of environmental inspector, wildlife biologist, conservationist, and environmental planning. Victoria was with us a couple weeks ago and actually kicked off the spring's talk series, and she did it all on recycling. And I had so many people ask to see that talk that that was actually why we began recording the talk series, is because we had so much request for that talk to be given to the community. So we were lucky enough to have her to talk about composting, which I do quite often in my yard. My compost pile is pretty awesome. I don't like to brag about it, but I'm going to. So I'm going to make Victoria, I think she already is, I'm going to make her the host. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Victoria, you can take it away.
All right, so I'll share my screen. Go ahead and get my presentation up. Okay. Couple of logistical. Okay, so hello, thanks so much for attending today. As Chris said, it's really great that we have an avenue to do this, and supporters such as yourself really allows for the Port Royal Sound Foundation to be able to offer this. So thank you for all of you for attending. Thanks for the sponsors. And of course, thanks for Port Royal Sound Foundation. It's really a big help to have an outlet to get to more people. So yes, as Chris said, I am the recycling coordinator for Beaufort County. I'm Victoria Hoffman. I'm employed by the Beaufort County, and my job as a recycling coordinator is education and outreach, right? Get to people about recycling and other sustainability topics, such as composting. So without further ado, we'll get started. I always like to begin my talks, whether it be about recycling or composting or anything regarding sustainability. I like to start at the top and then work my way down. So you may be wondering, what's a recycling coordinator doing here talking about composting, right? Well, composting is a form of recycling, right? So EPA is Environmental Protection Agency. It's a federal agency. And basically, information trickles down through EPA, and then it goes to your state agencies, and then it goes to your local government, such as Beaufort County. So as far as recycling and composting, EPA, they conducted a study in 2018, and they were measuring food waste. It was reported that more than 63 million tons of food waste were sent to landfills. That's an amazing number if you understand how many people are in poverty and they don't have access to food. And then here we are in America wasting 63 million tons. Whenever organic materials such as food waste and also yard waste go to landfills, it doesn't decompose properly. In order for something to decompose, which we'll talk about more in this presentation, because that's what composting is decomposition, you need an aerobic environment. But because of the way that we smush things down in landfills, that creates an anaerobic environment. So materials don't break down like we once thought that they would, right? Like long ago, we said, hey, if we dig this hole and throw our trash in it, it'll decompose. No, it doesn't. In Arizona, they actually took core samples from a landfill, and they found newspapers over like 40 and 50 years old, and you can still read the newsprint. So things really don't behave the proper way when they're in that anaerobic environment. And then also another issue with that is the methane released when those organic materials do start to decay in that anaerobic environment. It produces a lot of those gases. So if you've ever been to a landfill, you can see where they do the methane release, and either they capture that methane and can power the grid with it, or sometimes they just burn it off. And then in 2021, a really great report came out from the Environmental Protection Agency, from farm to kitchen. And basically the EPA analyzed food waste in America and its toll that it takes in our country. So it has impacts on social, the economics, and the environment. So it really affects not just landfills and filling them up more quickly and methane release, but as a whole, it really is affecting our country. And this is our food recovery hierarchy. This is an image from EPA. So basically how this works is it's a pyramid, right? The most desirable action for your food waste is at the top, the least desirable is at the bottom. So source reduction, that's smart shopping techniques, such as making a grocery list before you go to the store, inventorying the supplies that you have in your home, or even restaurants, to make sure that you're not wasting food. And then feed hungry people. You know, if you have extra food, donate it. There are some really great causes in our country where they take that supermarket food and take it to a shelter so people can eat instead of it being sent to a landfill. So those are some options we have. And then feed animals. You can feed livestock with food waste. I had the privilege of living in Las Vegas and seeing what the casinos do with their food waste, and it's so amazing. There's a livestock farm in Las Vegas, and all those casinos that have those buffets, guess what? It's not going to a landfill. It goes to this livestock farm. So it's so exciting. You're feeding animals with all that food waste from the buffets and those kitchens on the strip. And it's a really great way to divert, right? And then industrial uses, this is kind of like biofuels. And then composting, it's kind of at the bottom, right? So that's why we want to start with that top source reduction at the beginning. And that's you changing your mindset and your shopping patterns. And then of course, in the last of the pyramid is to landfill it. So we're moving away from EPA and we're moving into our state government, right? And that is South Carolina DHEC. That's where I get my information from. It kind of trickles down from DHEC to me. So South Carolina DHEC, Department of Health and Environmental Control, they have really great initiatives. They have a Don't Waste Food Ambassador initiative. You can sign up to be a Don't Waste Food Ambassador, and that basically gives you the resources and tools to be an ambassador, then also encourage and educate others to be a Don't Waste Food Ambassador. But anyway, they have a goal to cut food waste in half by 2030. 30% of the waste landfill in South Carolina are organics. And typically that's a lot of that's yard waste. It's difficult to measure the food waste. So I'm assuming that that might increase a bit if we actually did food waste audits. But as we know it now, 30% of waste sent to landfills in our state is organic material. So we could be doing other things besides landfilling that, right? And then they also have really great links on their website to reduce your food waste, whether you're at school, in your home, or if you own a business. So I will send those links in the chat after the presentation for South Carolina DHEC, because they really do have a lot of wonderful resources, and a lot of the material that I have in this presentation is from them. Okay, so here are some tools that you can use to reduce your food waste, because as much as I would love for you to compost, it really is a great and wonderful thing. I want you to reduce your waste first, and that's for recycling, composting, always reduce first. That's reduce is the top of the recycle chain. Reduce is the top of the food waste pyramid, right? That's the very first thing that we can do. It's the very first thing that you should think about doing as far as waste in general. So to reduce your food waste at home, you can create a meal plan each week. I have 3 kids, so it can be hectic. So what I do every week is I make a list. Okay, Monday night, we're gonna have tacos. Tuesday night, maybe we should do tacos Tuesday. Anyway, so you get the gist, right? You make a meal plan, and then you take that meal plan, create your shopping list, and stick to your list when you're at the store. Don't go to the store hungry. You're gonna buy a bunch of junk you don't need. But really though, these are tools that help you reduce your food waste and save money. And then understanding your labels, sell by, use by, best by dates, just understanding what exactly they mean, how long can this stay good for, right? My husband always makes the joke that I'm trying to poison him, but I'm really not. And then you can prepare in proportion. So if you get a large container of meat, prepare that meat so you can spread it out throughout the week. And then if you do cook stuff, just prepare it so it's easier for you to just eat that food and take it as you go, right? You want it to be convenient. Be creative and use leftovers, and of course, only cook what you will eat. And then store your food correctly. Your refrigerator should be set at 40 and your freezer should be set at 0. When I found this out, that was not the setting of my refrigerator. So making sure that your refrigerator and freezer are set at the proper temperature is also going to allow you to extend the shelf life of those perishable goods. And then FIFO, if you've ever had the privilege of working in the food service industry, you will know what this means. First in, first out, right? So if you are bringing new products in, you want to put them into the back and slide the older products first. So those older products will get used first, right? It's basically just rotating your pantry or your refrigerator. And then of course the benefits of reducing your food waste, you're feeding people and not landfills, you're saving money by using these strategies. And of course, we're conserving our resources, and not only our resources of the food, but all the resources that it takes to grow and produce this food. If you've ever been on a farm, you realize how much hard work, how much time and labor and resources go into producing this food for us. So we don't want to just throw it away. So now we're getting into our composting. Why do we want to compost? Besides providing your garden with organic rich material, as I've already said, reduce your materials into landfills, right? That anaerobic environment is causing a lot of methane emissions. So you're kind of doing your part by composting, by reducing that carbon footprint, right? You want to conserve natural resources, like I already said, all the resources that it takes to go into creating food. And then of course, the resources that it takes to create a landfill. It goes full circle. And then again, reduce your emissions. It's great material for your garden. They call it black gold. And then it saves you money on fertilizers, mulch. And then of course, when you're reducing your food waste at home, you're saving money in that aspect too. And then saves county taxpayer dollars. It does. So in fiscal year 2021, Beaufort County spent $240,000 to dispose of yard debris. Leaves, grass clippings, sticks, twigs, pine cones, pine straw, $240,000. That's a lot of money we could save. I could think of so many great activities I would love to buy to take into the schools with that money. So that's definitely an avenue that we can take to save those funds. And then of course, when you put compost in your garden, it has a lot of benefits. You improve your soil structure and you're providing nutrients to those plants. So what is compost? What is composting, right? You hear these terms thrown around, but really what is it? So compost is the actual material that you're getting when you're composting. It's in a nutshell, it can be really scientific, but in a nutshell, it's dirt, right? It's that beautiful topsoil that you see that's full of nutrient-rich material. It is what occurs naturally in process, and it's a process that occurs naturally in the environment. It's the decaying of organic matter. It just happens a lot slower in nature. And by putting it into a compost bin, you're speeding that process up. So a little bit more into how it works. Composting, you can get really specific, really scientific about it. It doesn't have to be so technical. It doesn't have to be so scary. It's something that you can do at home. It's even something that I do at work. I come in and I have my business attire on, sometimes heels, and I attend to my compost bin, because that's where mine is here at the office. So anyway, in a nutshell, how it works, microorganisms, soil fauna, enzymes, and fungi work together to break the material down. So remember, those organic materials are decaying and leaving behind all the nutrients. And then you have your main components of your compost. You have your carbon, provides the energy for those microorganisms to work. Nitrogen provides the proteins that allow microorganisms to grow and multiply. Water, everything needs water to survive, right? You want to maintain moisture in your bin. And then of course, oxygen, right? Any living thing needs oxygen to survive and thrive. Okay, so this information for setting up your bin, we are referring to the bin that Beaufort County sells. We'll go more in detail about that bin, but we sell those bins on our county webpage. You can schedule to purchase one. We sell them for a really low price of $50, and it's a really large bin, about 3 foot by 3 foot, and they're really great and simple to use. They're called the Earth Machine. So as far as this bin, these are the materials and the tips and tricks that we provide people who are purchasing these bins to set up their bin. So when you're picking your bin, you want to place it in a convenient location. And you also want to place it somewhere in your yard that isn't very close to your doors or your windows, just in case that your bin does kind of become imbalanced. A balanced bin typically shouldn't smell. It will have, you know, obviously a little bit of a decaying odor, but nothing crazy. But in the instance where you may be attracting flies, fruit flies, any other little critters, they're going to be there. Don't place it too close to those doors and windows, but close enough to where you're not going to be deterred from walking to it with your compost crock. You want to have a mixture of some sunlight and shade. If it's fully exposed in the sun, that's fine. It just may get a little hot and you may have to water it a little more frequently, but try to find that little Goldilocks zone of sunlight and shade, and that'll help you retain the moisture. You want to make sure it's close to a water source because you will need to keep it moist. And we'll go into the texture of what your bin should stay, but allowing for the facilitation of the decomposition, you are going to need to keep water in the bin. So if you have a water hose close by, that's great. If you have a watering tin, that's fine, but just be mindful that wherever your bin is placed, that you will need to add water to it. Okay, so we are talking about now to start your bin, and you have different types of bins. There's a million ways to skin a cat, as they say, and there's a million ways you can compost. But you can have an active bin or you can have a passive bin. The only difference really between the two is an active bin sounds pretty self-explanatory. It's going to work a little faster. You're going to have to tend to it a little bit more. And then a passive bin, you kind of just go with the flow, and it will take a little bit longer to decompose your product. But for the active bin, you want to start your bin off by alternating your layers of your browns and your greens. That's your carbons and nitrogen, and we'll go into that more detailed later in the segment. There are so many ratios online. When I was making this presentation, I was like, really 30 to 1 and 25 to 2 or who knows what. But this is what I found works for me. And my ratio is basically a 3 to 1 ratio, a little bit more browns in your greens. And there are several other types of composting bins. You can dig a hole in the yard and throw your compost and it'll work, right? So be mindful of that. This is for the Earth Machine. You can create a compost bin any type of way that you want. And then of course for the active bin, I like to tell people too that you're kind of layering your materials as you start, like a cake, like a layered cake, right? Greens, browns, greens, browns. All right, so now we're moving into the kitchen. Now that you have your compost bin set up in your yard and you're ready to start and you've got your greens and your browns in there, you can go to the kitchen and look at what you can divert and put into that compost bin for decomposition. I like to use a compost crock, what they call it. I actually have mine here. It looks very similar to this. It has a carbon filter at the top. So the fruit flies can't fly in and out. And this is maybe when the biggest time that you will have an odor is if you don't empty your compost crock and you have a lot of food scraps in there. As those first couple of days when they start to decompose, they do kind of have a little bit of an odor. So it's nice to have a bin that has a lid to keep the pests out. You can use the compost crock like you see on the screen. Other things that I've used in the past, I've used old Folgers coffee canister with a lid. It works just fine. Tupperware containers. You can also store your scraps in a container or a bag and place it into your refrigerator or your fridge. And that'll eliminate any food decomposition smells, or if you don't want to keep it on your counter. You can, whatever works best for you. I like to keep it on my counter right where I use my cutting board, because then it's just automatically into the compost bin with the scraps, right? And then you want to make sure that whatever you're placing from your kitchen, whatever bin you're placing your material in, that it's small enough that you can carry it outside to your compost bin. So be mindful of that, that you're going to have to transport it. And then in the yard, some tips, small items, depending on what size your compost bin. Remember, I'm referring to the earth machine. So you want to make sure that if you put large materials in, maybe not, you have to turn your bin. And if it's a large stick, it could pose a hazard. So I like to tell people, if you can break the material down a little smaller, and that goes for your food waste too, it'll also expedite the process, the smaller pieces that you have. So I like to break large sticks down. You can throw twigs, sticks, leaves, grass clippings. If it's organic, typically it can go in your bin. But you can gather the materials that are in your yard, dead plants that you want to throw in there, it can all go into your compost bin. And then this next slide kind of tells you a little bit more. I keep saying greens, browns, carbon, nitrogen materials. So this is a really great image that I borrowed from South Carolina DHEC, and I'll be giving you their link at the end of the presentation. Excuse me, so these are your browns and your greens, nitrogen and carbons. And as you can see, you can put so much into your bin. I do have a slide coming up next that says don't put into your bin. But for the majority of the things that you're finding in your yard and things that you have in your house, you can really throw a lot into that bin. And once you start diverting this waste, you really see like, wow, like if you're recycling and you're composting, the amount of trash that you're sending out of your house really decreases, and it makes a difference. So Grumpy Cat's here to tell you no, right? Remember his face? Maybe it's a girl, I forget. I think actually Grumpy Cat passed away. Anyway, I digress. This is what you're not going to put into your bin, right? So I have asterisks by some of these, and I'll go into that. But you don't want to put human, dog, or cat waste in there. If you did see that last slide, you can put livestock manure, anything that's an herbivore, that manure, but you don't want anything that's eating meat products. Don't put that bio waste in your bin. No meats, bones, or seafood and dairy products. Those have an asterisk because you can compost those things. They will break down. They will smell. So I cater this to residents who live in close proximity to neighbors. So I err on the side of not putting that into my bin and telling people maybe not putting it into their bin. It'll smell, and also it'll attract the pests that you don't want. Like, it's okay, you're gonna have bugs in any compost bin, but when you start putting the dairy and the meat products and that decayed meat smell is emitting from your bin, you're gonna attract the larger critters that you may not want, and also you might make an enemy of a neighbor. So I say don't put it in. If you want to put in dairy and meat products, you definitely can though. And then for the toxic plants and toxic weeds, and then disease and infected plants. So there's controversy about this, as with everything in life right now, right? But there is compost controversy about that. So you can put those materials into your compost bin. However, if your compost bin doesn't reach a high enough temperature to kill off what is the diseased plants, or to kill off the seeds in your weeds, then you're potentially putting that material on the plants that you want to thrive and stay healthy. So if you're not sure that your bin's going to reach those temperatures and you're not checking it with a thermometer, I kind of say don't throw it in. But to be honest, you can, but that is something that you may have to deal with, is if the bin doesn't reach that high enough temperature to kill off those materials and bacteria, you might be having an issue. So also you don't want to put any treated or painted wood. So if you have a mulcher and you're mulching, treated wood, don't put that in your compost bin. I mean, it is an organic material, but it has those chemicals. And remember, you're breaking everything down to its smallest little detail, right? And you don't really want to put those chemicals on your plants. Just think of it as like a full circle. And then remember, if you are putting your peelings, like from bananas and oranges, to take off the trash. Don't leave those stickers on, because then you're going to have to pick those little stickers out when you are harvesting your compost material. I think I covered everything. All right, so how to
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So somebody asked, what can we do to encourage Beaufort County to do community composting as they do in Charleston? I believe Chicago does that too.
Yeah, a lot of people along the East Coast are adapting that. Talk to your county representatives. Tell them that this is something that you would like to see in your county. I am all for it. But if you know anything about Beaufort County and the process and measures that we have to take in order to obtain permissions, it has to go through council. So reach out to your local representative on your council in your district and let them know how you feel about this. Let them know that you would like to have a community composting program. Also, if you're in a community, I would love for you to reach out to me. I will give you my contact information at the end of this presentation. I'm working currently on getting communities on board for a community composting initiative. So I'm not sure if you would fit the criteria, but if you're interested, definitely I'll give you my contact. I would love to hear more about what your community is, and we can discuss that. But as far as like a large scale community composting program, Beaufort County wide, please contact your local representatives of council so they know that it's something that their residents want to see. I'd love to see it happen, but that's kind of how the change is going to be made. It takes a group. So definitely please voice those opinions. Allow people to know that that's something that we want to see in our area. And that's how change happens, right? But it has been talked about. It definitely has been talked about. A sustainability campus is something that Beaufort County has been talking about for quite some time now, and hoping that it's something that's going to be obtainable in the near future. Any more questions?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Please do. Whoever had that comment, definitely contact me. I'll give you my contact information. All right, so how to maintain your bin. So we've worked on working through the kitchen and diverting your waste, going through your yard, diverting that waste. So now it's time to take care of your baby, your little compost bin. So you want to make sure that you're adding materials, right? I like to say I feed my compost bin, because you kind of are. You're feeding those microorganisms every time you're placing new things into the bin, right? They decay and it completes the process. So add materials to your bin a couple times a week or as you receive them. And then you need to provide oxygen to your bin. So you're going to do that by turning it. And depending on what type of bin that you have, with my earth machine bin, I use a pitchfork and just go around in a circle from the top, turning it that way. And then you want to water it. Your bin should be damp like a wrung out sponge. You don't want it to get too dry because then the decomposition is not going to be facilitated. And again, you can chop the large items up so they decompose quicker. And then when I put food waste into my bin, I like to cover it with material already in the bin, because that will also decrease any smells that might be emitting from that decomposing food. But typically speaking, your compost bin really shouldn't have a crazy odor to it. And if it does, that is an indication that it's unbalanced. And we'll go further into that in the next couple of slides, what to do with an unbalanced bin. And there's all kinds of resources as well. But I always like to tell people that your compost bin is kind of like a pet. You got to check on it every once in a while, give it a little love and attention, and then eventually it'll give you love back in the form of your dark, organic, rich material, right? And then with an active bin, you want to turn it a couple of times a week, and then a passive bin at least once a week. All right, so you put all this time and effort and attention into your compost bin, you've diverted your waste, and now it's time to harvest it. Woohoo! In the fall, or really whenever your compost bin is ready, depending on when you're starting it, that could be anytime. But typically the summertime with the heat, it speeds up that decomposition process. But whenever it resembles dirt, a dark soil, it's time to harvest your material. You can get a compost screen to help you sift out the materials that are fully decomposed and the ones that are not. Because typically if you just have one bin and you don't have like an old bin and a new bin pile, you're gonna have to sort through those materials that haven't yet decomposed. So compost screens are really helpful with that. But you get a wheelbarrow and you lift your lid and basically shovel that material onto the wheelbarrow and out of your bin. And then you can take the material that hasn't decomposed yet and place it back into your compost bin and start the whole process all over again, right? And then there are several ways to retrieve your material. You can pick up in your whole bin and just reposition it. You can open the door and retrieve it. Either way, whatever you feel works best for you. It doesn't matter how you get that dirt out of there. So using the compost, I've said several times that it really provides a lot of nutrients to your soil. You can place it in your garden bed. You can place it on your vegetable garden. You can place it around your trees, and you can also top dress your lawn with it. It helps with water retention. So you have to water your lawn less. It makes it healthier. You're providing, it's basically a Flintstones gummy vitamin for your plants. So it provides all those nutrients that it needs to thrive and grow. And you're coming back full circle. You're completing the circle with composting, right? You've diverted your waste, you've made it into compost. Now you're putting it back into the ground to start the whole process all over again. And it really is great. They really do call it black gold because of how it's basically a miracle product for gardeners. And then if you want to use your compost with potting soil, that's a little ratio. You can use 1 part compost to 2 parts potting soil. All right, so now we're going to go through some composting myths. We're going to debunk them, and hopefully I've already said these a couple of times. I like to repeat the important information a couple of times so you remember them. This is actually something I forgot to mention. Do not add citrus. That's a question I actually get quite often, and we'll go into that because I did forget to mention it. Another myth, you can't compost meat and dairy. I said something about that earlier. Who was listening? Composting is easy. You can't compost cooked food. You need a specific ratio to compost, and compost smells. So here are the answers. So the first one, do not add citrus. That is false. You can add citrus to your compost bin. However, if you have an acre of land and it's all orange trees, and you're putting in tons and tons of decomposed oranges into your bin, you may have an acidic bin. And if your bin becomes too acidic, it won't be balanced correctly, and you'll have to balance it. And that's typically adding more dry sources like carbon. So if a bin is acidic, it won't decompose. It'll kill all those microorganisms. So that's why a lot of people say don't compost citrus, but you totally can. Just be mindful about how much you're putting into it, that you may kind of knock that pH balance off. So you can't compost meat and dairy. That's false, you can. Remember I said you can compost those materials. It's gonna smell and it's gonna take longer to break down, and you're gonna attract pests that you do not want. And then so composting is easy. That is true. It is naturally occurring process. I feel like a lot of times people make it a little harder than it is. When I was creating this presentation, sifting through the information, I was like, I have done this. Why am I getting so stressed out? Like, this is easy. What are these people making it so hard for? It's really not that hard. I compost, I bring my stuff and I compost in my work clothes. And it takes just a couple minutes to throw the stuff in my bin, give it a turn, moisten it with the water hose, and then we're done. And then you can't compost cooked food. You can. That is false. But like I said, eliminate those meats, dairies, and then oil and grease. Then you need a specific ratio. This is false as well. You can throw anything into your compost bin. If you want an active bin, it's good to keep that ratio alive. But you don't have to. It's fine. It'll decompose. It'll just take a little bit longer and it's fine. And then compost smells. So it definitely can. But if you balance your bin properly, it should not smell. And if you are having a smell, we'll discuss this in the next slide, you can balance it. So when you do put food waste into your bin, it can kind of, you've all smelled like a rotten apple in your cupboard. It can have a little bit of an odor, but whenever you throw it in your bin and then kind of cover it with that material, it eliminates the odors, and they really do dissipate quickly. I mean, I have my compost bin here at work and I haven't had any coworkers say anything yet, other than having a bit of a fruit fly because I had a bucket of compost, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So this is a really great image that I took from South Carolina DHEC. I'll be sharing this link, and I've referred to this guidebook a couple of times, but basically troubleshooting your problems. So here are some symptoms that you might be seeing in your compost bin, what the issue may be, and then of course the solution. So this guidebook, it's called Composting Recycling Naturally, Simple Steps for Starting at Home. It really is a wonderful tool that you can use, especially if you want to find out which bin is right for you, and any information that you may need as far as composting. But it's a really great tool. And again, these are just some symptoms. And I'll send Chris a PDF file of this presentation if you'd like this resource. But again, I will also be sending the link for you to also review. But I just like to let people know that you may run into some problems. As with anything new, we may hit a little bit of a roadblock, but there's always a detour that you can find, right? So some other composting options that you can do is grass cycling. So I mentioned that you can put your grass in your compost bin, where you can also just leave it on your lawn and it's fine. It'll decompose out there too. And then a composting option that is just so near and dear to my heart is vermicomposting. And that's using worms to facilitate the composting process. And you can do it even indoors and outdoors. And when I say indoors, I know people cringe and are like, oh, gross, I'm not going to put worms in my house. But you really can. I lived in the desert and it was too hot to compost outside. It was just insane to try to keep your compost bin moist. And also, there's a really big water shortage. You're not really wanting to water a compost bin, right? But vermicomposting, it really is a wonderful process. You can do it outdoors and put the worms in your compost bin, and actually they help you so much because they're turning your materials and also help keep it moist with their casings. but really love vermicomposting. I'm trying so hard to get it into the schools because it's something that I've really enjoyed doing in the past. And it's fun, right? You can watch your little worms rail around. So here is our compost flyer. As I said, Beaufort County does sell compost bins. You can go to our website to schedule a pickup. That's the link that you can find it at, and they're $50. Retail value of this bin is over 100. I think almost 120 or something I saw, but we sell them for 50. We started this initiative in 2015. South Carolina DHEC gave Beaufort County bins, and we've been selling them ever since. And we've been able to sustain this project. We've reordered bins twice now. So it's something that we love to do for the community, and we're definitely going to keep providing the bins at an affordable rate to residents until hopefully we get that composting facility that someone asked about. That is definitely a goal. And we also have a really wonderful tutorial. I partnered with Beaufort County channel team, Rob Lewis. He films Coastal Kingdom. Him and I partnered together and we created this wonderful tutorial, and it's basically composting 101. It's going through all the information that I've given you so far, and it's already received a lot of views on our YouTube, and I've been asked to speak about it at Carolina Recycling Association's conference later this month. So we're making waves with this. We're really excited to present it. It's been shared on social media. It's on our webpage. And it's a wonderful resource too, if you want to look back and refer to any of the talking points that I've spoken to today. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. Here is all of my contact information, my email, my phone number. Definitely please reach out. Whether you want to email through Chris or myself, we can get you the PDF version of this presentation. And you can also call or email me if you have any questions. Do you have control now, Chris?
I do
share
not.
Your screen.
You should still have control, but I can.
Let's see. Here it goes. Oh, I think it's on my other.
Oh, it's okay. You can just hit the stop at the very top. You should be able to stop sharing.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was an awesome talk.
Yeah.
I do want to just, help emphasize to everybody who's listening how easy composting is. I mean, I started a compost bin with a lot of hesitation, simply because I didn't know what I was doing. But I mean, the more you do it, it's really easy and obvious when you're not doing it right. And it's very easy to fix things when it's not going right. Like, I walked in and it was, soggy and wet and swampy, and I threw on a bunch of dried leaves, and a week later it was totally fine. And vice versa. I came in, it was really dry, and I threw in a bunch of greens, and it went right back to what it was doing. So I've had a lot of success with it, and I'm very happy with it. It's also reduced the amount of waste that I produce, like the amount of trash that I actually put into my trash can, because I don't have anything rotting in there. I mean, I maybe, fill up a paper trash bag once a week, and that's about it with my, whatever's not being recycled or in the compost. So it's pretty awesome in that way too.
Yeah, it really is wonderful. And when you start diverting your waste, you can just see it. And my county administrator, he commented on that. He was like, we started recycling like crazy. We started composting, and the amount of trash that we saved from sending to the landfill was crazy. So he's really for it after, having experienced it himself. And when you start diverting that waste, you really see it. And it is fun. Like you were saying, like, it's not hard to troubleshoot it. You can look at it and be like, look a little dry. Let's see what we can do here. Look a little wet. What can we do here? It is science, but it's simple science. It occurs naturally. So it's definitely nothing to be afraid of. And then a couple of other questions that I've received. Recently, when I presented this talk at Hilton Head, people were concerned about the plastic bins that we sell. So this isn't the only type of bin that you can get. They have wooden bins that look really classy if you have an HOA who may have stricter standards. They also have these really wonderful bins called a sub pod. And it's basically a bin that goes into the earth, or you can put it in a raised garden bed. And that can eliminate those pests, because I understand that a certain type of marsh rat can eat through plastic. But there are alternatives. If you do have that concern, you can get those wooden bins, or you can get those sub pods that hopefully eliminate those pesky little critters.
Yeah, for me, I don't even have it in a bin. I just have two. I created like a fence line and with a divider, and I put all my browns, and then I have my active compost, and it's super simple.
Nice.
But obviously, some people like to have a much cleaner garden than I do. Mine's like a wild forest. So
yeah, you probably have cooler neighbors than I do.
I have no HOA. That's
yeah.
the ticket.
Yeah, there are some HOAs. I've been looking into those ARB standards lately. So it is a little bit of a hurdle to cross. But I feel that it's definitely something that we can still do. And I'm actually in the process of hopefully getting in contact with those management agencies and seeing, okay, what will you allow for people to do who want to compost?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Victoria.
Yeah.
If everybody wants to look at, we put in a couple links in the chat for DHEC and for Beaufort County solid waste and recycling. Guys I would just click on those if you're on a laptop, and it should direct you directly to a website. So whenever we're done here, you can still have that link available to you. And catch us on the next talk series. And finally, I want to just say thank you one last time to our sponsor, the DHEC Group with the Homes Finder Realty Group. I really appreciate everything that they've done. So, and I hope you guys will be on the next one. So we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you so much, Victoria, again.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Yep. Have a great day.
Thanks, you as well.